The council chamber floated in the void between stars, a last refuge for species that had nowhere else to run. Hana stood before the assembled representatives, her hands shaking as she held the ancient data crystal. Around her, beings from 100 worlds watched with eyes that had long given up hope. The Vorath were coming. Everyone knew it. The question was no longer if they would die, but when. 3 days, said Council Speaker Domath, his forearms hanging limp at his sides. Our best analysts give us 3 days before their fleet reaches this station. Then it's over. Hana took a breath and stepped forward. She had practiced this speech 1,000 times in her head, but now the words felt like dust in her mouth. Still, she had to try. There might be another way, she said. Her voice echoed in the vast chamber. Curie found something in the forbidden archives. Something old. Older than the Vorath themselves. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The forbidden archives were sealed 10,000 years ago for good reason. Things in there were meant to stay buried. Curie, young and nervous, activated the holographic display. Ancient text filled the air, written in a language that made the translation system struggle. Images appeared between the words. Strange creatures standing on 2 legs, pale skin, forward-facing eyes, primitive weapons. They called themselves humans, Curie said, her voice barely above a whisper. The old records say they were the primordial species, the first children of chaos. The texts say even the ancient gods feared them. Impossible, someone shouted from the back. Nothing scares the gods. The Vorath think they are gods now, Hana replied. They conquered death itself. They bend reality with their thoughts. But these records say humanity made the true gods run and hide, made them flee to other dimensions just to escape. She pulled up another image. It showed battles, endless battles. Humans fighting with metal and fire, with poison and plague, with weapons that split atoms and turned cities to ash. The images showed a species that spent its entire existence perfecting the art of killing. They're extinct, Domath said, studying the images. These records are thousands of years old. This species destroyed itself long ago, yes? Maybe, Hana admitted. Or maybe they're just somewhere else. The texts mention a dimensional barrier, a way to separate their realm from ours. The translation is unclear, but I think our ancestors locked them away. For everyone's safety. And you want to bring them back? Another council member stood, anger in their voice. You want to unleash a species so violent that our ancestors feared them more than death itself? We're already dead, Hana said simply. The Vorath will kill us all. They'll burn our worlds and add our civilizations to their collection. At least this way we die trying something. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew she was right. They had tried fighting. They had tried running. They had tried diplomacy and surrender. The Vorath wanted only one thing, absolute domination. They had achieved immortality and decided that made them gods, gods who answered prayers with fire. What would this ritual require? Domath asked finally. Curie brought up more data. Power. Enormous amounts of power. The ritual needs to punch through dimensional walls. We would have to drain 3 entire star systems to generate enough energy. 3 star systems, someone breathed. That's billions of lives. Those systems are already evacuated, Hana said quickly. The Vorath took them months ago. The stars are still there, just empty. We can use them. And if this works, Domath leaned forward. If we somehow manage to summon these humans, what then? They might be worse than the Vorath. The records paint them as loving war more than peace, as being beautifully insane. Then we'll deal with 2 enemies instead of 1, Hana said. But at least the Vorath won't be alone in thinking they rule the universe. The vote took 3 hours. Species argued and debated, through blame and accusations, made desperate calculations about the value of risk versus certain death. In the end, survival instinct won. The vote passed by a narrow margin. They had 2 days to prepare the ritual. The energy collectors were old technology, barely functional, but they worked. Massive pylons extended from the station, reaching toward the 3 dead star systems. Engineers worked without sleep, knowing every hour counted. Hana watched the preparations from the command center, wondering if she had just doomed them all. Curie stood beside her, reading and rereading the ritual instructions. It says here that humans are unpredictable, she said, that they don't follow normal patterns of behavior. They make decisions based on emotion and instinct as much as logic. Sounds dangerous, Hana replied. Everything about them is dangerous. Look at this. Curie pulled up a battle record. In one of their wars, a human soldier threw himself on an explosive device to save his companions. He died instantly. The record says this wasn't unusual, that humans regularly sacrifice themselves for others. Hana stared at the text, trying to understand. Every species she knew valued individual survival above all. The idea of deliberately dying for someone else was alien to her. Maybe that's why the gods feared them, she said quietly. A species that doesn't fear death is a species you cannot control. The ritual began on schedule. The energy collectors activated, draining power from 3 distant stars. The stars dimmed, their light failing as unimaginable amounts of energy flowed into the station. The collectors glowed white-hot as they channeled the power into the ritual chamber. Ancient machinery, unused for millennia, rumbled to life. The air itself seemed to crack and tear. Reality bent around the ritual circle, creating a wound in space that hurt to look at. Then something pushed through from the other side. Ships appeared in the void. Strange angular vessels covered in metal plating and bristling with weapons. They were primitive compared to Vorath technology, but there were hundreds of them. They moved in tight formations, responding to each other with perfect coordination. Hana opened communication channels, her heart hammering. The main view screen flickered to life. A face appeared. Human. Male. Scarred and weathered with eyes that had seen too much. He studied her for a long moment before speaking. The translator struggled with his language, glitching and stuttering before finally making sense of his words. "You summoned us," the human said. "It wasn't a question. That means you're desperate. That means you have an enemy you can't beat." He smiled, and it was the smile of a predator.
"Tell me about this enemy."
"Tell me about something that thinks it cannot be killed." Hana explained quickly, showing him data about the Vorath, their immortality, their reality-bending powers, their unstoppable conquest. She watched his expression, trying to read emotion in an alien face. When she finished, the human leaned back in his chair. "I'm Commander Deho," he said, "and I think you just made my year interesting." Finally, something worth fighting. Behind him, Hana could see other humans. They were preparing weapons, checking equipment, moving with purpose and confidence. Not one of them looked afraid. She realized then what they had done. They hadn't summoned saviors. They had summoned something that loved war itself. The Vorath were about to learn that being a god meant nothing to creatures who hunted gods for sport. The humans moved through the station like they owned it. Hana watched them from the observation deck, trying to understand what she was seeing. There were only 50,000 of them with 200 ships. The Vorath had millions of soldiers and thousands of vessels. By every logical calculation, the humans should be terrified. Instead, they were laughing. "I don't understand them," Hana said to Curie. "We just told them they're facing an immortal enemy that bends reality." They responded by asking where the food was. Curie nodded, equally confused. "I've been monitoring their communications. They're sharing something they call jokes. Even their military commands have humor mixed in. It makes no sense. A human approached them, female, wearing a practical uniform covered in pockets and tools. She smiled brightly, showing her teeth in what the database said was a friendly gesture. "Hello, I'm Jisu, xenobiology specialist." She pulled out a small device and pointed it at Hana. "Wow, you're Kelrin, right? 4-chambered heart, distributed nervous system. Fascinating. How long do your people usually live?" "About 400 years, Hana said carefully. "If we're not killed?" 400 years. Jisu's eyes went wide. "That's amazing. Humans only get about 80, maybe 100 if we're lucky. No wonder you all seem so cautious. You've got a lot more to lose." The casual way she discussed death made Hana uncomfortable. "Doesn't it bother you, being so short-lived?" Jisu shrugged. "Not really. It's all we've ever known. Besides, it means we don't waste time. When you've only got a few decades, you learn to make them count." Commander Deho appeared with another human, a lean man with calculating eyes. "This is Minho," Deho said. "My strategist. He's been analyzing the data you gave us about the Vorath." "Already?" Hana blinked. "We only transferred that information 3 hours ago. There are thousands of battle records in there." Minho nodded, pulling up a holographic display. "Your tactical data is very detailed. Almost too detailed. You document everything perfectly, but you don't adapt. Look at this battle from 6 months ago. The Vorath used the same opening move they used a year before that, and you responded the same way both times." He manipulated the display, showing more battles. "They're predictable because they don't need to innovate." They're immortal and powerful, so they just overwhelm you with force. And you're cautious because you're afraid to lose anyone. Your people are precious because they live so long. And humans aren't precious? Hana asked quietly. Deho and Minho exchanged glances. Every human is precious, Deho said finally. But we learned a long time ago that sometimes you have to risk the precious things to protect them. Your people try to fight without losing anyone. We fight to win, even if it costs us everything. He activated another display showing human military history. Hana watched in horror as battles played out. Humans throwing themselves against fortified positions. Pilots steering damaged ships into enemy vessels. Entire cities sacrificing themselves to buy time for others to escape. You're insane, she whispered. Maybe, Minho agreed. But we're still here. We've been fighting each other for 10,000 years. Every war taught us something new. The Vorath haven't had a real challenge in millennia. They forgot how to struggle. Over the next day, Hana watched the humans work. They moved through the station, talking to every species, asking questions about Vorath tactics and technology. Jisoo was everywhere, her enthusiasm never fading. She treated the crisis like an exciting adventure instead of certain death. The War Council meeting was unlike anything Hana had experienced. Deho stood before the assembled leaders and presented his plan with disturbing confidence. We're going to attack Kalmoros, he said simply. The chamber erupted in shouts. Kalmoros was a Vorath fortress world. It had never fallen. 3 civilizations had tried to take it and failed. That's suicide, Domath said firmly. Kalmoros has planetary shields that can stop any weapon. Defensive satellites that blanket the entire system. A garrison of 50,000 Vorath warriors. You have 200 ships. Exactly, Deho said. They won't expect it. They think we're weak because we're mortal. They think we'll be cautious because we can actually die. That's our advantage. Minho took over, displaying tactical data. The Vorath shields are designed to stop energy weapons and high-speed projectiles. They use reality-bending technology to deflect attacks. But that technology has a weakness. It needs processing time, 0.003 seconds to analyze and counter an attack. That's nearly instantaneous, someone objected. For energy weapons, yes. Minho smiled. But we're not using energy weapons. We're using relativistic missiles. Simple metal projectiles accelerated to 90% light speed. They don't need to be smart. They just need to be fast and heavy. He showed calculations that made Hana's head hurt. At those speeds, a simple metal rod carried enough kinetic energy to shatter moons. And because they were just matter moving fast, the Vorath shields couldn't redirect them in time. You'll never get close enough to launch them, Domath said. The defensive satellites will destroy your ships. Some of them, yes, Deho agreed. We calculate we'll lose about 60 ships getting into launch range. That's acceptable. Silence fell over the chamber. 60 ships. Thousands of human lives. Deho said it like he was discussing the weather. How can you accept those losses? Hana demanded. Those are people. Your people. Deho looked at her with tired eyes. Every one of them volunteered. They know the risks. They know some won't come back. But they also know that if we don't do this, the Vorath will keep winning. They'll eventually find Earth and everyone we left behind. So yes, we accept the losses. Because the alternative is worse. The debate raged for hours, but eventually the council agreed. They had no better options. The humans would make their attack in 2 days. Hana found herself assigned as liaison to the human fleet. She boarded Deho's command ship and immediately noticed the difference. Vorath ships were elegant and clean, filled with technology that looked like art. Human ships were cramped and practical, every surface covered in warnings and instructions. Not much to look at, Deho admitted, but she'll get the job done. This is the Defiant. Built for war and nothing else. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons and systems. Hana noticed something odd painted on the walls. Numbers and names, what are those? She asked, pointing. Kill count, a young human explained. His name was Hyunwoo, a pilot with a reckless grin. Every enemy ship we've destroyed. Every battle we've survived. We keep track. Why? Because it matters. Because every name represents someone who tried to kill us and failed. It's a reminder that we're hard to kill. The fleet departed on schedule. 200 human ships supported by a handful of Accord vessels crewed by volunteers. As they accelerated toward Kalmoros, Hana listened to the human communications. They were playing music. Loud, chaotic music that seemed to match the rhythm of their heartbeats. And they were singing along, voices raised in defiance of the void. What is that? Hana asked. War songs, Deho said. Every human culture has them. Songs to raise spirits, to remind us what we're fighting for. That one is called Warriors. It's about refusing to surrender even when everything is lost. Hana listened to the lyrics, struggling to understand. The song spoke of blood and glory, of fighting until the last breath, of preferring death to defeat. It was savage and beautiful and utterly alien to her. You really love this, don't you? She said quietly. War, battle, the struggle. Deho was quiet for a long moment. No, he said finally. We don't love war. We love what comes after. Peace, safety, home. But we learned that sometimes you have to go through hell to protect heaven. The Vorath forgot that. They became powerful and thought that meant they were invincible. He pulled up a display showing Earth, a blue-green world covered in water and life. That's home. We'll probably never see it again. This summoning pulled us through dimensions. We don't even know if we can go back. But if fighting here means the Vorath never find Earth, then it's worth it. The fleet entered enemy space. Alarms began to sound as Vorath sensors detected them. Hana felt her heart race as enemy ships appeared on the displays. Deho stood calm and ready. All ships, this is command. Remember the plan. Remember why we're here, and remember that the Vorath think they're gods. He smiled, and it was a terrible thing to see. Let's show them what mortals can do. The battle for Kalmoros was about to begin. The Vorath fleet commander, Seojun, watched the approaching human ships with something close to amusement. 200 primitive vessels against his armada of 6,000. The humans must be desperate or insane. Probably both. They're actually coming, his second officer said, disbelief in his voice. I thought it was a probe or a distraction. They're really attacking Kalmoros. Seojun settled into his command throne, a seat he had occupied for 2,000 years. Let them come. We'll destroy them quickly and then finish with the rest of the accord. These humans will serve as an example of what happens when lesser species defy us. The human fleet spread into attack formation. Seojun noticed they moved well, with coordination that suggested experience. But coordination meant nothing against superior firepower. He had already uploaded the human engagement data to the fleet network. Every Vorath ship knew exactly how to counter these primitives. Fire when in range, Seojun ordered. Conserve power. This won't take long. The first wave of Vorath warships accelerated forward, reality-bending weapons charging. They would erase the humans in minutes. Then something unexpected happened. The human formation broke apart. Ships scattered in seemingly random directions, moving in ways that made no tactical sense. Seojun frowned, checking his displays. They were sacrificing their formation integrity. Any Academy student knew you maintained formation in fleet combat. The Vorath ships opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space, striking human vessels. 3 ships exploded immediately, their shields overwhelmed. But the rest kept moving, now accelerating hard in different vectors. What are they doing? Seojun's second officer asked. They found out seconds later. The scattered human ships had created gaps in the Vorath formation. And through those gaps something moved. Small dark objects barely visible. Detecting multiple projectiles, a sensor officer called out. Velocity 0.90 light speed. 0.92, 0.95. Seojun's eyes widened. Impossible. Nothing moved that fast except energy weapons, and these weren't energy. They were matter. Simple, stupid matter. The relativistic missiles hit before the shields could compensate. Simple metal rods moving at near light speed struck Vorath battle stations with the force of atomic weapons. The shields tried to deflect them, but the processing time wasn't fast enough. 3 stations vanished in flashes of kinetic fury. Recalculate shield parameters, Seojun snapped. Focus on kinetic threats, but the humans had already adapted. Their ships dove into the Vorath formation, closing to ranges where the large warships couldn't effectively target them. And they were launching smaller missiles now, conventional explosives that the shields easily stopped. Except they weren't trying to damage the shields. They were trying to overload them. Hundreds of small missiles detonated against Vorath shields, forcing the reality-bending technology to work continuously. The shields held, but they consumed enormous power doing so. Power that couldn't be used for weapons. A human ship, small and fast, streaked past Seojun's flagship. The pilot's face appeared briefly on the display. A young male human with a wild grin. Hyunwoo, the combat identification, tagged him. Come on, gods, Hyunwoo's voice came through the communication channels. Is that all you've got? His ship was damaged, trailing atmosphere from a hull breach. But he was still flying, still fighting, and he was heading directly for a Vorath carrier. "Stop him," Seojin ordered. Point defense weapons tracked the small vessel, filling space with destructive energy. Hyunwoo's ship took hit after hit, armor boiling away, systems failing. But he kept going. At the last moment, something ejected from his ship. A small pod barely large enough for one person. The ship itself, now just a flying bomb, slammed into the carrier's command section. The explosion wasn't large. The carrier's shields absorbed most of it. But the ship had penetrated deep before detonating and the blast was focused. The carrier's command center ceased to exist along with everyone in it. Hyunwoo's escape pod tumbled through space, its beacon active. Already other human ships were moving to recover him. They planned for their ships to be destroyed, Seojin realized with growing horror. They build in escape systems. They expect to lose vessels and survive anyway. The battle continued, and Seojin watched his tactical certainty crumble. The humans fought like nothing he had encountered. They took risks that should be suicidal. When a ship was crippled, the crew kept fighting, manually operating weapons even as sections decompressed. A human destroyer, the Indomitable, took a direct hit that sheared off half its hull. By all logic, it should have retreated or surrendered. Instead, Captain Minji redirected all remaining power to weapons and rammed a Vorath cruiser, both ships vanishing in a ball of plasma. But before the collision, the crew had evacuated in pods. Dozens of them, scattering through the battlefield waiting for rescue. "They waste ships like ammunition," Seojin's second officer said. "How can they accept such losses?" "Because they're mortal," Seojin said quietly, understanding finally dawning. "They've always known they could die. It doesn't paralyze them. It frees them." The ground assault began while the space battle still raged. Human soldiers in armored pods dropped from orbit, burning through the atmosphere like meteors. Vorath ground forces, confident in their immortality and superior technology, moved to intercept. The humans hit the ground running, literally. Their pods cracked open and soldiers emerged, weapons already firing. They moved in small teams, supporting each other, adapting to Vorath tactics within minutes. Taejin led one of these teams. Seojin watched through surveillance feeds as the human special forces operative and his squad infiltrated a defense tower. They moved with frightening efficiency, using explosives and hacking tools with equal skill. A Vorath warrior, 3 times their size and wielding reality-bending powers, confronted them. The warrior could have killed them all with a thought. Should have. But Taejin threw something, a small sphere that exploded into thick smoke. In the confusion, his team scattered and attacked from multiple angles. The Vorath warrior's powers were formidable, but they required focus and targeting. Against enemies attacking from everywhere at once, even a god could be overwhelmed. The warrior fell, his immortal consciousness forced into a new body far from the battle. And the humans took the tower. This pattern repeated across the battlefield. Vorath forces, used to enemies that feared death, found themselves fighting enemies that accepted it. Humans died, yes. Hundreds of them fell in the first hours. But the survivors learned from each death, adapted, changed tactics. One incident became legendary. A human soldier, wounded and dying, found himself next to a Vorath war engine, a massive vehicle that was crushing his squad's position. The soldier had 1 explosive charge left, not enough to damage the engine from outside, so he crawled underneath it. Seojin watched the footage later. The soldier, bleeding and broken, set the charge manually, then triggered it. The explosion killed him instantly but disabled the war engine's power core. The vehicle collapsed and the human squad pushed forward. They recovered his body later, treating it with respect even in the middle of battle. This too was strange. The humans cared deeply about their dead, even as they willingly became dead themselves. The battle for Kalmoros lasted 3 days. 3 days of constant fighting, of humans dying and pressing forward anyway, of Vorath forces slowly being pushed back by an enemy that refused to stop. On the 3rd day, Seojin found himself confronting Commander Daeho in person. The human had fought his way to the command center, a dozen soldiers with him, all looking exhausted and battered but still dangerous. "You cannot win," Seojin said, genuinely confused. "We are immortal." "You are mortal. Simple mathematics says we prevail." Daeho smiled, and it was tired but genuine. Mathematics doesn't account for will. You've been immortal so long you forgot what it means to fight for something that matters. We know we're going to die eventually. Everyone does. So we might as well die for something worth dying for. He raised his weapon, and Seojin realized he was about to experience something he hadn't felt in 3,000 years. Pain. Death. His consciousness would survive, uploaded to a new body, but the fear was still there. For the first time since ascending to godhood, Avorath felt mortal terror. Surrender the fortress, Deho said. Or find out what happens when gods bleed. Kalmoros fell. The fortress that had stood for millennia was captured by mortals who understood something the immortals had forgotten. That the willingness to die for a cause was more powerful than the inability to die at all. The news spread across the galaxy at light speed. The Vorath Empire, which had conquered hundreds of systems, had lost. Lost to primitives. Lost to mortals. Lost to humans. In his command ship retreating to Imperial space, Seojin sent a message to the Vorath High Command. 4 words that changed everything. The humans are dangerous. The Vorath High Command emerged from their dimensional sanctum for the first time in 1,000 years. Beings of pure energy. Consciousness uploaded into reality itself. They had transcended flesh and bone so long ago that physical form was just a memory. Now they gathered in a space outside normal time, considering the impossible problem of humanity. They took Kalmoros. The first among equals said, its voice resonating through dimensions. A fortress world that stood for 3 millennia. 50,000 humans defeated a garrison of Vorath warriors. They are primitive, another council member argued, barely beyond chemical rockets and nuclear fission. Their technology is laughable, yet they won, the first replied, which means we have made an error. We became immortal and powerful, but we stopped learning. These humans never stopped fighting, never stopped adapting. They are evolutionarily honed for war. Then we destroy them, a third voice said. Bring out the weapons we sealed away. The reality bombs, the dimensional cutters, the time dilation fields. Erase them from existence. The first considered this. Agreed, but understand what this means. We are gods taking mortals seriously. That alone should concern us. The orders went out. The full might of the Vorath Empire, held in reserve for theoretical threats, would be deployed against humanity. The humans wanted war. They would get war on a scale their primitive minds could barely imagine. Deho stood in the command center of the orbital station above Kalmoros, watching the tactical displays with growing concern. The humans had taken the fortress world, yes, but the cost had been severe. 5,000 soldiers dead, 63 ships destroyed, and now intelligence reported a massive Vorath fleet assembling in 3 nearby sectors. They're not playing anymore, Minho said, analyzing the incoming data. These aren't garrison forces or patrol fleets. These are dedicated warships, and they're carrying weapons we haven't seen before. Hana had been with the human fleet for 3 weeks now, and she still couldn't fully understand them. After the victory at Kalmoros, the humans had celebrated, mourned their dead, and then immediately started planning the next battle. No rest, no extended grief, just constant forward motion. How many? Deho asked. At least 15,000 vessels. Maybe more. They're using some kind of cloaking technology we can't fully penetrate. Minho pulled up star charts. They're hitting us on multiple fronts, trying to split our forces. How many humans do we have left? 43,000 combat-ready personnel. 137 operational ships. The numbers hung in the air like a death sentence. Even with Accord support, they were outnumbered and outgunned. But Deho just nodded as if he had expected this. Then we adapt. Minho, start working on guerrilla tactics. We can't fight them head-on anymore. We need to hit fast and disappear, make them chase ghosts. Over the next weeks, the war expanded across multiple systems. The Vorath deployed weapons that bent reality itself, dimensional bombs that erased entire fleets from existence, time dilation fields that trapped ships in frozen moments, planet killers that cracked worlds like eggs. The humans lost thousands. Entire fleets vanished in single engagements. But they kept fighting, kept adapting, kept learning. Dr. Yunhee worked in a medical station that moved constantly, staying ahead of Vorath advances. She was exhausted, having not slept more than a few hours in days. The wounded kept coming. Humans, Kelrans, dozens of species all bleeding and broken. I can't save them all, she told Hana during a brief moment of quiet. Every day I lose people. Good people. Brave people, and I'm supposed to just keep going. How do you do it? Hana asked. How do any of you keep going? Yunhee was quiet for a moment, checking a patient's vital signs. Because stopping means they died for nothing. Every person I save justifies the ones I couldn't. Every day we survive means their sacrifice mattered. She moved to the next bed, where a young human soldier lay recovering from severe burns. His name was Jiwon, barely 20 years old. He had held a critical junction for 6 hours against overwhelming Vorath forces, allowing thousands of civilians to evacuate. His entire squad had died. He was the only survivor. How are you feeling? Yunhee asked gently. Jiwon managed a weak smile. Like I got hit by a star. Did they make it? The civilians? Yes, all of them. Because of you and your squad. Good. He closed his eyes. Then it was worth it. The Battle of Junction 7 became famous across the galaxy. Footage of Jiwon's squad, outnumbered and outgunned, holding a narrow pass against wave after wave of Vorath warriors. The humans had used every trick they knew. Improvised explosives, collapsing tunnels, fighting hand-to-hand when their ammunition ran out. One by one, they fell, but they bought 6 hours. 6 hours for 15,000 civilians to escape to safety. Other species watched the footage in stunned silence. The humans didn't have special powers. They weren't immortal. They were just stubborn, determined, and absolutely refused to give up. Hana found herself commanding a mixed unit now, humans and Kelrans working together. The humans had taught her species something important, that sometimes you had to risk everything to protect anything. Her unit specialized in hit-and-run attacks. They would strike Vorath supply lines, destroy communication relays, and vanish before reinforcements arrived. It was dangerous, terrifying work, but it was also effective. You've changed, Jisoo told her after one particularly successful raid. The xenobiologist had taken to fieldwork, helping coordinate between different species. When I first met you, you were so cautious. Now you lead charges. You humans are contagious, Hana replied. Your madness spreads, Jisoo laughed. It's not madness. It's just deciding that some things are worth fighting for, even if you don't win. Minho worked without rest, analyzing every battle, every Vorath tactic, looking for patterns. He barely ate, barely slept. Daiho ordered him to rest, but Minho refused. There was too much to do, too much to learn. I found something, he told Daiho during a strategy meeting. The Vorath are networked. Their consciousness exists in a shared space. That's how they coordinate so perfectly. But networks have vulnerabilities. He displayed complex data that Hana couldn't fully understand. We can't hack them directly. Their technology is too advanced. But we can introduce something else. A concept. An idea. What kind of idea? Daiho asked, doubt. Minho smiled. The Vorath haven't lost a war in millennia. They don't know how to process defeat. We've beaten them once. If we can beat them again, in a way they can't explain away, we plant uncertainty in their collective consciousness. Psychological warfare, Hana said. Against gods. Against beings that think they're gods, Minho corrected. There's a difference. Real gods probably can't be killed. These things? They're just advanced beings with good marketing. The plan was ambitious and dangerous. Operation Prometheus, they called it. Simultaneous strikes on 17 Vorath command nodes across multiple sectors. Each strike team would be small, fast, and expendable. The goal wasn't just destruction. It was demonstration, showing the Vorath they could be hit anywhere, anytime. Minho volunteered to lead one of the teams. Daiho argued against it, saying they needed him for strategy, but Minho was adamant. I designed these tactics, Minho said. I should be there to prove they work. The operation launched at midnight station time. 17 teams, each with a handful of ships jumping simultaneously to their targets. Hana watched from the command center, tracking the missions in real time. 15 teams succeeded. They hit their targets, destroyed the command nodes, and jumped out before Vorath reinforcements arrived. 2 teams didn't make it. Minho's was one of them. His team had encountered unexpected resistance, a Vorath defensive platform that intelligence hadn't detected. The battle was short and brutal. Minho's ship took critical damage while covering his team's retreat. He stayed behind, manually overloading his ship's reactor, taking the Vorath platform with him. Daiho received the report in his quarters. He read it 3 times as if reading it again would change the words. Then he carefully set down the datapad and sat in silence. Hana found him there an hour later. He was holding something small, a photograph. She recognized Minho in the image, younger, smiling, standing next to Daeho. Brothers in all but blood. He knew the risks, Daeho said quietly. We all do. That doesn't make it easier. I'm sorry, Hana said, not knowing what else to say. Daeho stood, carefully placing the photograph in his pocket. His face was hard, emotions locked away where they couldn't interfere. The Vorath want to be gods. They want to rule everything, live forever, never face consequences. He looked at Hana and she saw something terrible in his eyes. Not rage, not grief, but determination forged in pain. We're going to show them what happens when mortals stop being afraid. We're taking this fight to their homeworld. To Eternus itself, Hana felt cold. Eternus was a legend, a myth. The Vorath throne world, existing partially outside normal space and time. It was considered impossible to reach, much less attack. That's insane, she said. Yes, Daeho agreed. It is, but so is everything else we've done. And we're still here. Sunmi sat in the intelligence center, surrounded by data that made her head hurt. She was human, but she specialized in something unusual for her species, patience. While other humans charged forward, she sat and analyzed, looking for patterns in chaos. Found it, she said suddenly, causing everyone around her to jump. She had been quiet for 3 days, barely eating or sleeping, just staring at sensor data and ancient Vorath records. Daeho arrived within minutes. Found what? The path to Eternus. She pulled up a display showing dimensional mathematics that looked like abstract art. It's not unreachable. It's hidden. The Vorath homeworld exists in a pocket dimension, stabilized by their collective consciousness. Like a bubble floating in reality. Can we pop the bubble? Daeho asked. Not directly. Their combined will is too strong. But we can force them to lower it themselves. If we attack from multiple dimensions simultaneously, they'll have to choose which attacks to defend against. And in that moment of divided attention, we can slip through. Hyunwoo, recovered from his carrier strike and already flying again, whistled low. Attack from multiple dimensions, sure, easy. Like robbing 17 banks at once while juggling. Exactly like that, Sunmi agreed, missing his sarcasm. We need to coordinate strikes across 17 different dimensional angles. The timing has to be perfect. 0.001 second accuracy. Jisoo had been studying Vorath biology and technology for weeks. Now she presented her findings to the council, and what she said changed everything. The Vorath aren't naturally immortal, she explained, displaying complex genetic data. They use technology to upload their consciousness when their bodies die. But here's the important part. They can do this because their minds are naturally psionic. They project their thoughts into a shared space. She paused for effect. Humans can't do that. Our minds are dimensionally static. We exist in one reality, one timeline. For species like us, that seems like a limitation. But for beings that exist partially outside normal space, we're invisible, unpredictable. Their psionic senses can't read us properly. That's why the ancient gods feared us, Hana said. Understanding. We're natural predators to ascended beings. They can't control what they can't understand. The preparation took 2 weeks. Every available ship, human and Accord, was modified for dimensional jumping. The technology was experimental and dangerous. 3 ships were lost during testing, simply ceasing to exist mid-jump. But the humans kept refining it, learning from each failure. The assault fleet numbered 10,000 vessels, humans, Kelrans, and dozens of other species that had learned to fight the human way. They had lost so much, but they had gained something too. Purpose. Unity. The knowledge that some things were worth dying for. Hana commanded a wing of mixed ships now. She wore human combat armor, modified for her physiology, and carried weapons that her people would have considered barbaric just months ago. She had changed. They all had. All units, this is command. Daeho's voice came over the fleet channels. Today we do something impossible. We attack gods in their own home. Many of us won't come back. But those who do will tell a story that echoes through history. The day mortals stopped being afraid. The fleet jumped. 17 simultaneous dimensional transitions, each one aimed at a different angle of attack on Eternus. The universe bent around them, reality twisting into shapes that hurt to perceive. Ships emerged from impossible directions, appearing in the Eternus system from angles that didn't exist in normal space. The Vorath defenses were immediate and overwhelming, weapons that rewrote physics, that turned matter into energy, that froze time itself. 20 ships vanished in the first seconds, but they had expected losses, planned for them. The human way of war. Hyunwoo led the atmospheric assault wing diving toward Eternus itself. The planet was beautiful and terrible. Cities that phased between dimensions, architecture that defied geometry, towers reaching toward skies that showed multiple realities at once. "All wings, follow me," Hyunwoo called. "Remember, we're not here to win, pretty. We're here to win." His squadron dove through defensive fire that vaporized 3 fighters immediately, but the rest made it through, burning into an atmosphere that tasted like lightning and tasted wrong in ways that couldn't be described. They landed hard, pods crashing through crystal streets that rang like bells. Armored humans and aliens emerged, weapons ready, charging forward into a city that had never seen invaders. The Vorath defenders were confused more than anything. Their homeworld had been inviolate for 10,000 years. The concept of enemies here, in the heart of their empire, was literally unthinkable. Until now. Taejin led a strike team toward the Emperor's sanctum, a tower that existed in 7 dimensions at once. They fought through corridors that shifted, stairs that led in impossible directions, rooms where time moved differently. "This is insane," one of his soldiers said, trying to aim at enemies that appeared and disappeared. "Yes," Taejin agreed. "Now you're getting it." In orbit, the battle raged. Hana's ship took hit after hit, shields failing, armor boiling away, but she kept fighting, kept commanding, kept pushing forward. Around her, ships died in fire and light. But for every one that fell, they damaged the Vorath defenses a little more. The tide was turning, not because humans were winning, but because they refused to stop losing. Daeho's team reached the Emperor's sanctum after hours of fighting. The tower's interior was vast, a space that seemed to contain galaxies, and at the center, a being of pure light and consciousness, the Eternal Emperor, first of the Vorath, who had transcended flesh before human civilization even existed. "You cannot win," the Emperor said, its voice resonating through reality itself. "I am eternal. I am beyond death. I am a god." Daeho, battered and exhausted, raised his weapon. "You're a coward who ran from mortality and called it ascension. You gained everything and lost what made you real. And what is that?" the Emperor asked, genuinely curious. "Stakes. Consequences. The knowledge that today matters because tomorrow you might not be here. You became gods and found out godhood is a prison. You've got forever but nothing worth doing with it." The Emperor studied him. "You're right," it said, surprising everyone. "We achieved immortality and discovered it was meaningless. Endless time with no urgency. Infinite power with no challenges. We became gods and realized gods are just prisoners with pretty cages. It manifested something like a human form, beautiful and terrible. You mortals, you who face death every day, you're more free than we ever were. You embrace your mortality and it gives you purpose, while we hide from it and become hollow. Then surrender," Daeho said. "Come back to the mortal world. Remember what it means to be alive." "No," the Emperor said sadly. "We've been gods too long. We've forgotten how to be anything else. There's only one mercy you can offer us now." Daeho understood. The human way of war included knowing when to show mercy, and when mercy meant something darker. The device they carried was human engineering at its finest. Not a weapon of energy or exotic matter, just applied physics, an entropy accelerator. It would speed up time locally, forcing the Emperor to experience eternity in seconds. For a being that had fled the passage of time, it was the most terrible weapon imaginable. "Do it," the Emperor said. "End this. Free us from forever." The device activated. The Emperor's form blazed bright, experiencing all of time at once. 10,000 years. 1,000,000. 1,000,000,000. All of existence compressed into a single moment, and then simply ending. The Vorath network felt it. Every Vorath everywhere felt their Emperor cease to exist. Not die because death implied continuation, but end. Truly, finally end. The collective consciousness that held their empire together fractured. Without their anchor, without their first and greatest, the Vorath found themselves suddenly alone in their own heads. Individuals again instead of a unified whole. Many surrendered immediately. Others fought on, but without coordination, without unity. The god complex that held them together shattered like glass. In orbit, the battle ended not with a final explosion, but with a transmission. Vorath ships, thousands of them broadcasting surrender, requesting, in voices that hadn't spoken as individuals in millennia, for peace. Hana found Deho at the memorial they built on Eternus. It was simple, human style, just names carved into stone. Minho's name was there along with thousands of others. Was it worth it? She asked. All those lives? All that pain? Deho was quiet for a long time, looking at the names. They died free, he said finally, fighting for something they believed in, making choices that mattered. Yeah, it was worth it. The Vorath want us to teach them, Hana said. 17 species have asked for human military advisors. You're becoming the thing you fought against, the ones everyone fears. No, Deho said. We're not teaching them to be warriors. We're teaching them to be mortal. To understand that limited time makes every moment precious. That's the real lesson. The fighting is just how we learned it. Jisu's final research log, published across the galaxy, became required reading for every species. In it, she explained what humanity represented. Not superior warriors or advanced technology, just a species that never stopped struggling, never stopped adapting, never stopped learning. The gods fell, she wrote, not because humans are special, but because we're ordinary. We're mortal, fragile, limited.